Right, I want to draw a orthogonal view of this particular key tag. I've got a couple of 3D printed key tags here, and we're going to do a little exercise and draw an orthogonal view, hand sketching of this particular key tag. Later on we'll do it in CAD and we'll do a CAD drawing. So let's start off. So I've got to decide which way I'm going to make my front view, because a front view, a top view and a right hand side view are the main orthogonal drawing. So I'm going to pretend that there's a window sitting right here, and I'm looking at the object through this window, which is sort of like, how would I put it, sort of like that in front of you, and then I'm looking through this way. So that becomes the front view. So that's exactly as I'm looking at it now. That'll become the front view, that'll be the top view, and the right hand side view will come from here, will be like this. So let's start off by drawing just some lines to get us some perspective. Now I'm using a biro pen here, which is fairly light, so you can see them. You'll normally be using a pencil. So I'm going to sort of draw some lines here just to define how big I'm going to make my shape, like that. So this is my first square. Now I'm going to create another one down the bottom here, because I want my front view to be down the bottom. So they'll line up like this. Here's my front. Now we're hand sketching, so it doesn't have to be perfect. I know that there's going to be an angle on the side of each of these to create that little fillet that you see over there. Now I also know that we're going to have an internal shape sitting underneath it, or in between, a recessed shape. There it is there, and I'm going to reproduce those little fillets on the sides like that. So now I've got the outline that I can see. Now in the top left hand corner here, I've got a circle, so I'm going to indicate the center and mark out roughly how big that is. And there's my circle that I can see. And now I've got my printing. So looking at the printing here, just roughly, it seems to be about a third of the way. It occupies 1/3 of the total height of the object. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 letters with a bit of a gap in between. So I've got to fit 5 inside here. So okay, let's go in the middle there, and I've got to fit around about 5. 1, 2, see, that'll make 4. A bit more than that, a bit less, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not quite right, but now if you were doing a pencil, you could rub all this out. I'm only going to do it roughly 4, 5 like that. So let's make our shape. We've got a D shape over here, sitting like that. An A, it's like a classic looking A, sitting like this. A V, small shape like that. And again, I'm just looking at shapes. You know, there's rectangles, there's some squares, circles, triangles, and that produces the shape that I'm looking at. Now in a minute you're going to see how I'm going to trace over this shape with a thicker pen and make it look a lot more realistic. So let's use this pen over here for an outline. And it's a whole lot easier tracing shapes than it is trying to draw them first up perfectly first go around. So you'll find it often it's not the case. It won't be that way. So practice nice straight lines, keeping your elbow stiff as you can. Remember, it's a hand sketch, so it doesn't have to be sheer perfection. Avoid the hairy beast if you possibly can. Be content, or be content. So that's making a bit more sense now. Outline this shape here. And when I record this, I may even speed it up so that you don't have to be all bored watching me do all this. But it's kind of therapeutic watching someone else draw. All right, now in a minute I'm going to start with the top view. Okay, so there's the front view. There it is there. Now I'm going to do a top view. And you'll notice I've made it a bit bigger. I could do a formal scale. It's only fairly narrow on the top. So again, I'm going to use my pen that I have here to indicate my construction lines. So these are called construction lines. We do them to give us a feel for how the object's laid out, and later on we'll firm in the outline. So that would be an outline. Okay, so now we know that let's draw some lines up here to get ourselves some perspective. We know that there's another little line here, which is the inner edge of that little bevel section. I'm only doing these quite light because I want them to eventually be not noticed much. Now, there'll be quite a lot of detail going on here, which we won't necessarily get all. I'm drawing these lines up because here I know that there's going to be a dotted line going down, a recessed line. Remember, they're dotted lines when we can't see them, but we know that they're still there, and we see those dotted lines in orthogonal pictures. And there'll be another dotted line in there because there's that recess inside here. So that recess there will be visible with a little couple of dotted lines here. So there'll be numbers of little dotted lines flowing around through the A, the V, more dotted lines, the I, and the D over here. So it looks something like that. In the circle shape, I would always extend my center line because that's the center line of a circle, the long dash, short dash. Okay, and then across to the side, I'm going to do my right-hand side view. And of course, that's the front, so that'll be the right-hand side like this. And I'll locate my circle here. And I'll locate my little recess, which will line up with there. That one will line up with here. So that's all be dotted. Then I'm going to have a massive dotted lines coming through, looking at this from the side. And I'm not going to try and draw them all. It's just going to be too hard for me by hand. But when you see with the CAD drawing, you'll be able to do this completely and easily. So I'll outline it, and this is what your orthogonal sketch would look like. Now, the one thing that's missing is what? What haven't we got here that we should normally have? You know, I can hear you whispering, yes, it's dimensions. We don't have any dimensions because every orthogonal drawing that you know, that you'll see, will have dimensions to it. So we need to add some dimensions. Now, if I'm going to add the dimensions, and I'm going to have to also give you a scale, unless it's 1-to-1. So you would know exactly how big this object's supposed to do if you were going to be designing it in CAD, or you were a machinist in machining it using a CNC machine. You're going to need to know how big it is. Okay, so sizes. So let's do our dimensions. We'll make these into leader lines. And although I'm not going to measure the object, I'll just show you how to do it very briefly. So you have leader lines that stop about a very short distance from the... Are we recording? Yes, we are. Stop a very short distance before touching, usually about 1 millimeter distance before they touch, and the dimension goes up on top here. So I'll make that 60 millimeters. My scale might probably be, let's say, 1.5 to 1. That might be my scale. And then I'll move my dimensions across here to indicate. Now, if you've got too small a space here, you can put your leader lines on the outside like that and put your dimension up across here like this if you can't fit it in the middle. Okay, we might make another small dimension here just to illustrate to you that small dimension technique. So rather than trying to fit them in between the dimensions lines, put to one side. Now, all your dimensions that go in the vertical will be on top of the dimensioning lines and facing in the same direction. So this one here would be, say, 2 millimeters there. I need to write millimeters. It's assumed that it's millimeters. Okay, and I could do, say, a diameter. Now, the way that we indicate circle diameters is you put a leader line coming out, going across like that, and you can do either a radius, so I might call that R, which stands for radius 4, or if I wanted to, I can stretch the line across the middle, do 2 arrows from the side, and I'll call it a diameter, and that symbol there means diameter, and that could be the diameter 8, if I had an 8 size hole. So it'd probably be more likely to be a 2 and a diameter of 4 here. Okay, and I can add more dimensions here if I needed to. So that could be 6, or better still, I make it 8 because it's 8 over here, and you can add your dimensions. Right, what about we do an isometric of this as well while we're at it? Okay, let's do a quick isometric. Cross the line here, and this is going to be our front viewing plane. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to create my 30 degrees. Now, I'm just guessing the 30 degrees. I should check really and see how accurate I am. Would you like to know? All right, that's the 30-degree set square. Put it on there. So I'm probably got about, not quite right, it's probably around about, I don't know, 25 degrees. But it'll do for our purposes. So now I'm going to say this is my height of my object. I'm going to draw it up another parallel line to give myself that face. So there is 30 degrees. Now the top line is coming across over here. I'm going to give it some thickness, like that. Draw the line down, make these lines across. How wide is it? How long is it to there? That line has to be parallel to this line. The vertical lines have to be parallel with each other. That one goes down over here. So I've got like my square box shape. Next thing, what about the circle? Okay, well first before the circle, let's do some more parallel lines to show the recessed section that we have. Now of course we know that they're recessed like this, and they're going to have a curve around here. Now a bit tricky thing with the curves, when you do an isometric circle, and I'll eventually show you guys how to do one by hand, isometric circles are sort of sitting squashed at one end, longer at the other, and then squashed like that. They don't look round like this, they're actually squashed. So you can see the squashy and a bit rounded here, and they'll make it look realistic. All right, next thing, let's go and do our lettering. Here it is here, and the lettering is recessed in a little bit, so it's going to be sitting in there like that. And then we're going to have our lettering sitting over here. So we can draw the outline of the shape. There it is, there's the D, like this, and then we'll do the A. Now I'm rushing this a little bit for you guys because I know you'll probably look at this and go, oh, I'm bored, so I don't know. Okay, so I'm rushing it, but you'll get the idea of it. Now I want you to eventually you guys to do one of these for your key tag. So I want to see an orthogonal sketch for your key tag. Now of course there's a bit of depth and thickness to this, so there it is. And we're going to add that extra depth and thickness to make the object look 3D, like that. In through here, down through there, and there. Okay, not bad representation. Let's go over it with our pen to make it look a little bit more reasonable and realistic. Now, when you're doing outlines, obviously you know you're tracing them as carefully as you can. I'm going to make a suggestion to you that might make your drawing really pop a little bit more and be a bit more impressive. I've got an outline here too. And the suggestion is that your actual final outline, the border of your object, you need to use a heavier pen to do it. So what do I really mean by that? Well, let me show you as soon as I finish this, which won't be too far long from here. Now we can do those in a minute. Yeah, here we go. I mean, colouring in, tracing, it's one of the great joys really of life. It tends to be easier too if you do all the same lines that go in the same direction at the same time. Yeah, gives it for a more natural feel. Okay, there we go. All right, so there's our key tag. And now, remember I was telling you there about getting a thicker pen and making an overall outline? So that's a thicker pen there, thicker line. Let's do this and just see how well it looks. Because I know that you're thinking, oh no, sir, you're just talking through your shorts. That's not really how it goes. But I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. So have a look at this. Doesn't that look better like that? Now, if you wanted to be really cool about it, you can set a light source, say from this angle here. Drop the light source down, drop it down here, and you'd find that you'd have a shadow coming like that. You could draw your shadow in, and when you do shadows, if you ever do want to do them, leave a tiny little white gap in between your shadow and the actual object to distinguish it, because it will exist. Your eye will see that white gap, and it will note that it's a shadow and not part of the object. There's always a slight definition there between the shadow and an object, and this highlights them. Okay. So, one more thing. I know you're telling me, and I know you're right. We've got to remember that this is set into a depth. So it's going to come down here, roll around like that, and then come back across there like this. Okay, and that'll be a little bit darker over here. like that. All right, so here we go. There's our isometric drawing of our key tag. I want you to do an isometric drawing of your key tag that you design in CAD. Thank you.